Welcome to the Lovecars on the Grid podcast, your global motorsport roundup with me, Tiff, Needell and Paul Woodman.
Welcome to Lovecars on the Grid, your global motorsport podcast. We look back at a motorsport weekend ram-packed full of action, including McLaren and Max sharing the headlines in Hungary. Rovanperä cruises to victory in Latvia. Dramatic Indycar in Toronto. Larson kisses the Indianapolis bricks. Superbikes sweep for Razgat's Leogu and Vickers. And Whirline takes electrifying.
It's a ver. It's a ver. It's not a ver.
Verline.
In
My
German
German's
is
good.
a ver.
I know.
Well, that's Verline, isn't it?
Yeah, but you don't say BMW. You don't say BMW, do you?
Yeah, everyone calls him Verline.
I know his name is Verline. I'm sorry. I apologise, but he did take the electrifying title in London.
Mess of Rovanperä. You're going to start again?
No, we're going from here. You can pronounce them properly. That's not my job to pronounce things. My job's to keep you in order. Let's start with Formula One. Let's start with some news first, because there's still a bit of news going on about in the paddocks who's going to have what seat and who's going where, and it's all hotting up a little bit.
I don't care anymore. I've given up. Have you got some insider stories, have you, to give us, like Ferrari are definitely going as your first main story or not?
No, I just got all gossip, so let's just move on. Let's move on straight to the action.
Exactly, because what an action-packed Grand Prix for drama.
It was indeed amazing in Hungary. It was drama filled from the outset, really, with qualifying, practice qualifying, a little bit wet, a little bit.
Let's go
dry.
back to that. Let's just get on with the headlines. Which is the biggest headline? McLaren's team order fiasco or Max's team chaos? Which should we go with? I think it's
Max. Max is bigger, isn't he? I think
Max is the headline.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Let's be fair. I mean, he back to his old self. There's me praising him, becoming a Max fan over the last few months. The guy's changed. He's matured.
Well, I agree, but I think he is still that lovely character outside of the car. I think it's this Jekyll and Hyde. You know, we criticise Max's driving habits and the way he talks on the radio, but then when you get him out away from the cars, you know, he speaks his mind, he says what he thinks, he does what he wants to do, which we love that aspect of him, and he's a lovely kid. But then once things go against him, when he's sitting in a racing car, boy, he doesn't like it, and boy, does he make a fuss about it. We had this, it was right back to the old days, wasn't it, with from turn one, you know. When he ran wide and then came back on, obviously it overtook Lando coming back off, having gained an advantage. And then, of course, he's on the radio. My front wheel axle was ahead of his front at the apex. If you don't brake at all for a corner, you'll probably find your front wheel is ahead of everybody else's, but you're not going to make the corner. So this getting his front wheel ahead of Lando's was completely irrelevant because he was never going to make the corner at that speed. And it's all this on the radio. If that's the story, we just need consistency. And he was having to go to the FIA, wasn't he? You know, okay, we'll tell the FIA if that's the way it's going to be. That's the way it's going to be.
Tiff, I don't get how he's never wrong. I cannot understand why he's never wrong. In his mind, surely sometimes you know that it's not. It's you and it's not everyone else all the time. But with him in his head, you're right, and you're right. I think that's an important thing to know. Away from the pits, away from the racing, he's known as being one of the nicest people out there. You know, a real gentleman. And it's funny because Lewis, who I'm a big fan of, is the other way around apparently. So they all say. But anyway,
but I was amazed that he gave the place back.
What we see.
I was amazed he gave the place back. I was quite surprised. You know, I thought we had black flag and dear. And then of course we came to the clash with Lewis later on. Him and Lewis banging. This is the good old Formula One we all loved. Him and Lewis banging exciting. Wheels. And you know, Geddy was driving a great race, trying to stay with him, but then he didn't like his undercuts and overcuts. He was, you know, he's really moaning on the radio, wasn't he, about you fucked me up, you fucked me over. I pitted at the wrong time, I got the wrong tyres, the car won't turn, the car won't stop, the car won't accelerate. He was just ranting on to his team non-stop. And then, of course, he dive-bombed Lewis. And again, Anthony Davis did a really good analysis. I used his quotes when we did the Austria thing, where we talked about Max sort of suddenly moving in the braking zone. Because, of course, Max straight away says, he moved in the braking zone. And yes,
there's a corner.
But he did turn in slightly early. Now, unlike Max's Lando blocking in Austria, where it was very sharp, last-minute move in the braking zone. So, of course, because these cars, this is the problem with the law and how you write a rule, they brake to the apex. That is the way you drive in Formula One car. You're bleeding off the brakes all the way into the apex. In fact, your braking zone, if you define it precisely, goes all the way to the apex. So, of course, you are turning under braking. But obviously, the main thing
trail braking.
Yeah. But the main thing is you mustn't make any sudden movements under braking. I think, yes, Lewis turned in a fraction earlier, but whilst Max was now committed to do the overtake, but he certainly left him plenty of room. But Max had braked really late to try and make the overtake happen. Now his wheels on the marbles, he had a bit of muck probably on his tyres, and he locked up. And obviously Lewis has given him a lot of room.
He went in far too hot there. He went in far too hot. It was your standard Max Verstappen block pass, and you can't do anything about it. If someone goes down the inside, you either hit them or you in the corner.
Well, Lewis said it was racing. I think Lewis knew he'd squeezed him a bit, but that's racing. That's why Lewis called it a racing incident, whereas Max was going mad about him moving under the braking zone. But it was amazing both cars survived, weren't it, to finish the race?
Yeah, it was
huge.
Hell of a hit as well. But it's all that consistency. There is no consistency. Like I just said, Max never thinks it's his fault. And when it's the other way around, it's always the other person's fault. When it's this way around, it's the other person's fault. And it's got to be some consistency. But I think Max's engineer just summed it up where he just said, Max, I'm not going to argue this. This is childish.
This is
very
childish. Yeah.
And I think that summed up for...
He acts like a petulant child. This is this arrogant child that's re-emerged that we've had in the past. And when the going gets tough, the little child returns. And he told all the press to fuck off in the end, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. He said, he did. He said they can all fuck off if they don't like what he did. They can all fuck off.
Because people kept on bringing up the fact that he was doing sim racing till 3 a.m. Which. If he was, it doesn't. So well, the point is this sleep aspect. How many drivers have said, I couldn't sleep before the Grand Prix. I've raced out in Japan with jet lag. I've walked around my hotel bedroom from like 2 a.m. till 5 a.m. Before you go to race. I mean, the sleep element isn't something that a Grand Prix driver is really that concerned about. When adrenaline gets going, you've got plenty.
They're young kids. Crofty had such an issue about that, and he's got to remember as well that. He's going out to a global audience as well, Crofty and the Sky Sports are, and he's going on about Max. So it looks like he's against Max, where he's not. I don't think the Sky Sports team are at all.
Crofty was annoying me. Crofty started acting like an expert analyst, which he isn't. He's a commentator. There was one typical thing he did when Hulkenberg was holding off Alonso, I think it was, in the middle of the race. And he would say, Hulkenberg's tyres have gone now. He's got no acceleration out of the corner. He's coming out onto the straight, And he pulled away from Alonso. Visually, we saw that Hulkenberg still had plenty of traction, He tries to predict things. Because he sort of picks up expert analyst things about tyres are going off. You can see now. You can see the tyres that he's got no. You can't see that, Crofty. You're making it up because you've heard it. Sorry, Crofty. I just had a quick Crofty. Anyway, going back to the Grand Prix itself and the Max. Max going back to Max, but then of course the McLaren. Unless you've got any more gossip about Max. We'll move on to McLaren.
Let me ask you a question. Should he be speaking to his to GP, his engineer, in that way? Should he be speaking publicly to him? Not the rants and not the frustration, but should he be speaking? They do, don't they?
Way some drivers vent their frustrations of life, because the McLaren thing was the same, even worse perhaps, the non-ongoing. Lando's sort of beginning to lose a bit of popularity in a way.
He's getting very topsy. I said this a few weeks ago.
Well, I said, I think last week, Lando's got to stop beating up on himself. It's a team that makes mistakes and makes tactical errors, and he may have chosen the wrong tyre for Silverstone but debates it with his team. But whenever he hasn't won, he's always taking all the blame. It's I shouldn't have done that. I made a wrong decision here. And now the decisions were going against him in the team orders world, he just really didn't like it at all, did he? But it's a weird. the trouble with this, because obviously McLaren team, the management have under huge pressure because they made these mistakes. They're all admitting that they should have won 3 races, they didn't. And so obviously they've got obsessed now with trying to make the right decisions at the right time, because they're now really under pressure to do that. And so the first decision was, and obviously Lando lost the start, so he lost the start to Oscar and probably lost the Grand Prix there and then if he led us to turn 1. But the first thing was when Lewis pitted.
So I always disagree with you when you say that. I always disagree. How can you say that? 70 laps or whatever it is, and an hour and a half of driving, he lost it on turn 1. I know it's hard to overtake there, but it's not about turn 1. It's a bit different here because it is hard to overtake and it is a lot of strategy, but there was so much racing that went on that it's not always lost on turn 1.
All right. Well, having lost it on turn 1, we then found out the team manager, when Lewis stopped to change tyres, they wanted to cover. They thought, oh God, he's going to undercut Lewis, but he was too far behind. It was a sort of an overly managed management.
Exactly.
They could have stopped Oscar first, which is the normal procedure, but they suddenly panicked. Oh God, Lewis is going to get us, so we got to stop Lando first. So they shot themselves in the foot because they stopped Lando first. Then of course he undercuts Oscar. And then the Oscar thing, they wanted to leave him out a bit longer because I think he stayed out 2 laps. I think after he didn't come out, didn't come straight in because they were worried that Max would catch him. Because obviously at Silverstone, Max had that amazing charge towards the end of the race when Max got the right tyres. They got the hard tyres, and so then they left Oscar out for 1 more lap, worrying about Max. They were too worried about getting the wrong strategy. Yeah. So then, of course, Lando's got quite a big lead and he's pulling away. And so Lando starts believing he should be winning the Grand Prix, having lost one in Italy to Ricciardo. I bet that still hurts him, the fact that he dominated McLaren that year. And Ricciardo was useless until Monza, got the win at Monza. So you can tell he was trying to make them change their decisions, I guess. He was just trying to pressure him. But some of the comments from the pits, he's I don't know what the name of the guys on the radio, his strategists and stuff, the way he was talking to him, he was talking to him like a schoolboy as well, wasn't he, really?
It was so sycophantic, wasn't it? It was almost like blackmail. It was almost like, you need to do this, lad.
Remember
please,
Sunday
would you
mornings,
do this? Yeah.
Remember Sunday mornings, remember we'll need them in the future.
Very
just
awkward.
Sort of said, Lando, give it away. He should have been just more straight up, not trying to word it.
Hindsight is a perfect science. We've all got a PhD in hindsight, but in hindsight, for Lando's sake, if he gave that place up very quickly and let Oscar go a second in front or whatever, because he was faster than Oscar, and then raced him, then surely,
good point. Yeah, Lando
then he would have
had, couldn't he?
Yeah, then he would have had a. Then he would have a very valid point. I'm faster than him. We're racing because they said earlier.
But then
you can race.
You're stressing your tyres. Turn 4, turn 11.
I know.
You go too far. Turn 4, turn 11. We can't let Lewis catch us. Your tyres might go off. I don't know what was the lead at the end of the race. I don't know. You've got results up in front. I don't know how far behind Lewis was in the end, but he was miles behind, wasn't he? I don't know.
I think it was 6, 7 seconds. So it was a chunk even after he slowed down.
They probably would have said, don't race each other, your tyres will fall off a cliff.
Yeah.
So anyway,
exactly.
It was, and nobody seems happy at the end of the day. Put on Oscar, having his first Grand Prix win, it wasn't really the most ecstatic team, I'm sitting, little 3 of them in the little room, afterwards, sitting there. And Oscar almost seemed embarrassed that he'd won his first Grand Prix thanks to the team, telling Lando to do what he should do.
Well, Lando was a bit chopsy to Lewis then as well, wasn't he? There's beef with Lando. It's got a real thing about Lewis, and Lewis said, "Oh wow, man, your car was fast, man," and Lando said, "Well, so was yours 7 years ago." And Lewis said, I was complimenting you. I wasn't being constructive. I was complimenting you. Well done." So
they've certainly got a car that works now, haven't they, McLaren?
Yeah, they have.
But team orders have been with motorsport since it began and always will be, and people that said, well, I went down to bookies and bet on Lando winning that race and I've been robbed of my winnings. But you don't bet on motor racing unless you understand motor racing. I wouldn't bet on a horse racing unless for a laugh, knowing I'd lose my money 9 times out of 10. So I don't understand horses. So
I'm surprised the team orders, though, Tiff, because Lando is the closest to Max in terms of drivers' championship. But I guess they don't want the driver championship. They want the 1-2. They want
manufacturers. Yeah, it's manufactured championship. The teams are more. I think there's more chance of them catching Red Bull because of Checo. We'll come to him in a minute when we go back to Q1. So I suppose they were more interested in the 1-2 and the manufacturers' points, and in the future, it might work the other way. You can help Lando to win a race.
Anyway, 51 points behind. Let me tell you,
it was a great Grand Prix, a good Grand Prix because the points there wasn't much dicing, and overtaking's very hard there. But Formula One and Grand Prix is all about strategy and getting your tyres right. And you had Ferrari and Mercedes, pretty much chasing McLaren and Red Bull. So I thought it was a good Grand Prix.
Yeah, I thought it was a very good Grand Prix. You just said there's a lot of unhappy people. Daniel Ricciardo was one of those. He said he was the most unhappy he's been in 250 odd Grand Prix.
Was that after the race? What happened to him in the race then? Because he got beaten by Yuki again.
Yeah, he was just told different times, come in to pit, get you some clean air, and there's no clean air, and he just was unhappy with the strategy. So he just had a bit of a cob on.
We'll go back to the beginning then. Go back to the beginning in Q1.
Well, for Checo's sake, do we have to really go over this again? Because again, Checo. He's not going to be there.
Rookie error, with the drizzling rain, curbs. We all know curbs are wet. And even if they've got this special paint, which means it's the same grip, if there's little grooves in curbs, they will hold water. And if you put your two right-hand wheels on them when you're going to turn into a left-hand corner, your car will probably spin, Checo. Because we saw George had a similar moment, didn't he? When he only put half a tyre on the same curb. In fact, track limits, you see, these boys are so used to going whenever they want and having the same grip, whether they're 4 wheels on the track or 4 wheels off. Because we saw Yuki had that huge shunt in Q3. And again, he went so wide, but he hit this bit of grass, which apparently had a bit of a dip in it, and that put him in the wall. But yes, Yuki, you were virtually off the track. Therefore, you might hit something that's not a smooth racing track. If you go that far off, they did that. They took that bit of green carpet out to their grass, whatever it was, and put gravel in for the race because they did okay. I mean, you can't really have a piece of off-track safety that bounces you into a wall, which is what happened with Yuki. But nevertheless, if you stay on the track, boys, you'll have more consistent grip. But Sergio, he had quite a good race, Sergio, because he beat George in the battle from the back of the grid. He got 7th or 8th. Were they 7th and 8th or 8th? Yeah, 7th and 8th. And so he did beat George, because George, of course, was the other one that went out Q1 because of Mercedes. Not enough fuel in the car. George didn't do a very good lap and then didn't have enough fuel to do another lap. They're so obsessed, engineers.
I know.
Obsessed. Wait, another gallon or 2.
Half a kilo of fuel, yeah.
Oh. So also out of the 2 Alpines, Alpine, it's weird. They were quite good. They had about 2 or 3 races when they were top 10, and now they're bottom 5.
I know, it's funny how that's gone. So what? Talking of Checo Perez, so there's been 7 different winners this year from 4 different manufacturers: Ferrari, Mercedes, McLaren, and Red Bull. Now, who's missing from those 7 in the most dominant car up to now? Isn't that incredible? 7 different winners, though. That's amazing for the championship.
Yeah.
Well, I know Max is still streets ahead, but it's so nice to see it being so competitive. But wow, Checo Perez, he's lost his chance now.
I think Crofty made a big fuss of it again. The test that Liam Lawson had booked after the Silverstone Grand Prix was already booked, ages ago. It was in his diary to do an aero test or something. So, Lawson was in. But Yuki was quite, I forget what Yuki's word he used. It would be a laugh or something. And I agree with him. You said something about if Lawson gets the red, because that's the latest thing now. They're talking about Lawson getting the drive. Yuki says weird. Yeah, he just said it would be weird if Lawson went into the Red Bull and not me.
Daniel Ricciardo will get the Red Bull seat after this summer break. Daniel Ricciardo will be in.
Is this your latest exclusive? A new exclusive here from Paul Woodman.
No, it's just he will, because they want to steady the ship, and they want Max is number 1. They want someone that's going to get round, that someone's going to get into Q1 or Q3, get through qualifying. They want something in the top 10. They want someone that's not going to bring the car back damaged. They just want. And Ricciardo will do that. So I think, and it's a shame for Yuki, but I do think that will happen. Then Liam Lawson will probably take his place. That will be my gut feeling. But I don't know where where will Checo go? Maybe.
Well, I know. Who wants Checo? I mean, if he's still got some Brazilian money, he could go anywhere. Williams. And Williams again, poor little Logan Sargent. Still, I mean, he was 2 Williams and 2 Haas and a Sauber went out in Q2. Logan was only 0.114 slower than. He's slowly getting nearer Albon, but maybe Albon had a bad day. I don't know, but I can't see him staying there. Bless him. And this talking about the Prema team are going to run an IndyCar team, and Logan's probably got a bit of money in America, and I'm sure he'll end up having a great time in IndyCar. But nobody ever wants to leave Formula One. Q3, it was interesting. Q3 that Max and the McLarens were covered by 0.05. You know, Max is still, the speed was there. They had some new underbodies and bits, didn't they? Red Bull, and then Ferrari, Mercedes,
and overbody as well.
Equal second, but they're nearly half a second behind Ferrari and Mercedes. Then there's a big gap for Aston Martin back in the top 10 again, and then the Red Bull of Ricciardo ahead of Yuki in qualifying, but then Yuki had that big shunt. But I don't know. I've lost touch with what seats aren't taken. It's still 1 Williams seat, 1 Mercedes seat, 1 Red Bull seat.
For me, it's more about the drivers. Ocon. Perez.
Ocon, where's Ocon? Ocon Alpine. Williams.
Williams. He's Williams. That's all done, isn't it? Anyway,
I don't know.
Musical chairs Formula One. So, who won? Oscar Piastri. So he joins 4 other Australians to win a Formula One race. Who are those 4 other Australians?
Alan Jones, mate. Jack Brabham.
Yeah.
And Mark Webber.
Yeah, and of course Daniel Ricciardo as well. Yeah, very good.
I was 4, yes.
And I got another question for you, because we spoke right at the very beginning about the main headline, Max and Lewis, and they're coming together. Should either of those have had a penalty, or was that a racing incident?
No, racing incident. I agree completely with the racing incident.
That's good. That's good. It's funny because you look online and the Lewis fans are just outraged, and the Max fans are equally the other way around. I wonder what you.
That was good racing. I mean, it was really good racing. You know, I mean, Lewis pushed him wide around that turn 2. You know, but he left him a track's width of room, and it was just proper. I don't like
the dive bombs personally, but the theory is if somebody does dive bomb you, you take a wider line, you get the corner, and you get the cut back, and you get them on the exit. But then Max would have anyway. Let's move on.
Right, let's move on to Formula 2. And one little piece of the jigsaw for next year, of course, the other driver we're talking about is the Mercedes seat. And Kimi Antonelli had a really good weekend because this Prema team, they still can't get their cars as quick as the others.
He got a bit lucky though. He got in the feature of the race, but still.
But he qualified 7th. You know, we haven't mentioned Ollie Behrman, who's out in FP1, did a good Haas job, still slower than K-Mag in the Haas, but he only qualified 14th, 0.4 slower than Kimi. And whether Ollie's head's already in Formula One, he doesn't really care, or whether Kimi's a star. But yeah, Kimi, it was a weird sprint race because usually sprint races, they all have the same tyres because they don't pit. But there was this slight split strategy, and Kimi Antonelli, who was 4th on the grid for the sprint because he qualified 7th. He started on the soft tyres and romped into a lead, which looked good on telly until his tyres gave up and he dropped backwards. Because the front row boys who qualified, they're 9th and 10th fastest, aren't they? Richard Verschoor and Kush Miney, they had hard tyres, and so they soon caught up and left him behind. But Richard Verschoor then lost his win. He's already lost a win earlier this year for being, I forget what it was the last time. It was a plank anyway. His plank has worn out. So Richard Verschoor, he had some dodgy throttle mapping put in his computer, didn't he, at Saudi at the beginning of the year. So Richard Verschoor won on the road, but Kush Miney accepted the win in the end, and Victor Martins, who was on the soft tyre, he actually made his soft tyres last and finished 3rd. So it was an interesting sprint race for a change instead of just an obvious procession. And in the main race, Kimi Antonelli. So Kimi Antonelli was the first one to start on the hard tyre in the main race. Yep. So again, he dropped back, but then he hung on, stayed out of his hard tyre as they do, waiting for the last minute to swap onto the soft. So they had a couple of convenient safety cars. One allowed him to catch up with the guys on the quicker tyre, and the next one got him into the lead. So it was a bit of a fortuitous win for Antonelli. But he's maturing, he's getting there, and I think
he's smashing Ollie Behrman.
Well, yeah. but then does Behrman put the effort in anymore? He probably does. I don't know why. There is an interesting gap.
He got very choppy on the radio. Behrman told his engineer to shut up as well. I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't. He comes across that Butterwood Milton is loud. He's such an articulate kid.
I know. That's the thing. There's this little soft child you see on the outside, but there's obviously this bit of steel up his spine, isn't there? He's been through karting and Formula 4 and getting into a Formula 1 car, and so there's an inner steel in Behrman, I think. But I think it depends when they're talking. I think sometimes you're struggling like now with a car. Your grip's gone. There's lots of corners at Hungary.
I get it.
You just don't want to be spoken to. Come on, mate. Let's have a bit more speed. And you're like sweating your bollocks off trying to make the pace.
And it's just your instant reaction and don't forget these people are close. Max and his engineer being together nearly 10 years, so they say they're like brothers. So maybe people like me ought to shut up and let them get on with it if it's not broke.
Formula 3 again. The sprint race was dominated by the guys that qualified 10th and 12th, as it were, because they get the front of the grid. And coming through to win, there's a name and a half here, because who won in the end? Dino Bogdanovic, I think, the Bosnian Swede. No, he came second. Yes, he came second, having started 12th. And it was the Thai boy. And here we go, another name for us to try. I should listen to the commentaries, because the commentators on Formula 3, they learn all these names. I should concentrate. But it's Tassanarapol Intrafumasask.
Very good. Very good.
Won the sprint race, which is very good. And the main race from second on the grid, the Bulgarian Nikola Tusolov. Again, sorry, Nikola, sorry. Came through to win. And second on the road, who'd been on pole position, was the Belgian Laurens van Hopen, but he was disqualified for underweight. So a couple of disqualifications there in the lowerings. So the championship leaders weren't really in it. We've got Luke Browning, Gabriel Mini, isn't it? And Arvin Lindblad, who were the top three of the championship, still the top three of the championship. Only 2 more rounds to go in Formula 3. But none of them really scored points at all. But
do they do the same voice where they stop and then they have the final round at the end of the season, so you don't know anything until?
No, it's just F2. That's only F2.
F2. Okay.
So F3 ends on September the 1st. F3 ends.
Oh wow!
And Formula 2 goes right on until the end of October or November even. So yes, the best Brit was Callum Voisin, who's doing a really good job. Rookie, new to Formula 3, did British FGB3 last year, and was, of course, the Autosport winner this year. And he had 2 6th places, so coming slowly up the grid there, doing well. The best story of the Brits was the Porsche Super Cup race, where our mate Harry King finally came. Finally.
Yeah.
After Larry Ten Voorde has won 4 races on the trot, his Porsche wasn't quicker. He wasn't on the pace at all around Hungary. He finished 7th. But Harry, after 3 second places and a 4th, pole position, great start, and just left them behind. So it was wonderful to see Harry. He's not that far behind Larry now. Harry and Larry. What's that film, When Harry Met Larry? What's the film?
Sally.
Girls?
When Harry met Sally.
When Harry met
Sally. Yeah.
Well, this is When Harry Met Larry. So hopefully he'll go further in Belgium this weekend. So that was all what happened in Hungary. World Endurance, World Sports Cars.
It's not known for its racing, but I thought it was very entertaining. And
very entertaining.
Throughout. Yeah.
Because as I said, there was a lot of going on. There was some racing going on, even in Formula 1 with a different tyre strategy. And it's not a sprint. It's not an overtaking fest. Formula 1. It's not like Formula Fords and Caterhams. It's a Grand Prix. And
people are going to be shouting this, saying it was a DRS train the whole way. I thought there was enough going on for it to be exciting. Good
rallies again. World Rally Championship. Kalle Rovanperä, the part-time at Toyota, came first, and the Sebastian Ogier, the part-time at Toyota. And the trouble is, and it's a bit of a cheat, because they're entering these superstars, they're world champions from the past, or reigning world champion in Kalle's case. And because the starting order is where you are in the championship, the reverse of that. So Kalle and Seb are 7th and 8th for the championship or something. So they start 7th and 8th. And when you get dusty gravel roads like Latvia was, they have a huge advantage. So they start day one, whereas the championship leaders look mugs. Thierry Neuville, Elfyn Evans, Otto Tanak, them sweeping the road out front. In some rallies, that's dramatically different amount of grip. So they look good. And I'm sort of a bit peeved by the idea now. I love Kalle winning and Seb winning, but yeah, they're cheating in a way by just turning up occasionally. You're running 7th and 8th in the championship, and you just know that you're going to get swept roads. And so
that's a very, very good point, because we all know about the road sweeping in rallying, how important it is, what a massive difference the gravel makes.
Championship leader, he started first on the road and he finished 8th in the rally, and Elfyn Evans finished 5th in the rally. And so they're floundering around. Neuville brought up again this, star road order. And they've been talking about this for 300 years, And they briefly, not that long ago, because people talk about qualifying. And I don't know which years it was, but they had a little stage before the rally started, just a short, sharp blast, and pole position could choose his starting order. So if you're quickest, and it's a loose rally, you'd choose 8th on the road or 9th or 10th,
Yeah.
But the problem was, I don't know which Seb it was. One of the Sebs was obviously raining, whether it was Loeb or Auger at the time they had this qualifying. All it meant was that they got pole position every time, chose the correct road position, whether it's tarmac, they go out first, or whether they go out 8th. So, of course, they won the championship by halfway through the season. So that was the trouble. It meant that the champion won it even easier because he chose the better road position. So, obviously, you don't want people running away with it.
How should it be done?
Well, I think the qualifying is the only fair way to do it. I mean, if it means someone dominates the rally and wins, it's like Max Verstappen winning. If you're dominant, if you're the best car driver combination, and you win every qualifying, and you start.
But then, who goes out first in qualifying? Who's the road sweeper in qualifying? It's the same thing, surely.
They must have had stages that were sort of practiced on and used and beaten up. They probably didn't have a fresh stage, so they wouldn't have done that. I don't know how they did it.
Why don't they just send out a couple of people, WR2s or something first, to sweep for everybody? So it's a level playing
I think
field.
They did that one year. I think they actually tried to do that one year. It's a good point. But
what happened? Do you know what happened?
No. Probably all the WRC2 drivers complained.
now that I have a good contact with the WRC, I will ask that question. Come back, revert next week.
But the sensation of the rally was this Latvian boy, Martin Sesk, who he had a Ford. He had a Ford that didn't have the hybrid when he rallied the previous rally, and he was running in the top 3 or 4. But he had the hybrid version, the full-on Ford, and he started day 3, the final day, or day 4, because sometimes you have a stage on the Thursday night, which always confuses me. It's day 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, and he had several fastest times because he was obviously starting well down with Seb and Kalle. But he had problems the last and ended up 7th. But really, an incredibly light-hearted, cheerful, joking young kid whenever he was interviewed, and incredible. So I think Martin Sesks is a name for the future.
Good.
Definitely a name for the future. He'd actually done the Latvian rally last year on those stages in the national championships. He had a bit of advantage knowing the stages, but hey ho, you use all the advantage you've got. Over the Atlantic in America, then off we go to our United States, where we love IndyCar and NASCAR. Well, I certainly do. After 2 years, Toronto wasn't much overtaken this year. They got their hybrids. There was a couple of pushed passes going on. Fabulously tight, vicious. Again, hello Formula E. That's what you call a city centre race, is the Toronto IndyCar, not the flipping exhibition hall you're in this weekend in London. But it ended up being a Colton Herta. Finally, after 2 years, Colton Herta always has the speed, very talented. Everyone rages about him. But the Andretti team haven't really been beating the Penske's for a while. But it was an Andretti 1-2 with Kyle Kirkwood coming second. But the feature of the race was this accident. Have you seen it on YouTube and stuff?
Yeah, I saw it. I saw it live. I was watching it, yeah.
Pato O'Ward just lost control of the car. Amazing again. That's on the limit. Indy cars, you've got opposite lot. The cars are tricky to drive, and one of the best drivers in the grid. It was on a restart, wasn't it? Got it sideways, parked it up against the wall on the exit of the corner. There wasn't any yellow flags, or so they say. The lights didn't go on, but even so, it all happened in about 2 seconds.
Yeah, you're going around the blind corner, and you're committed, and then you come around the other side 100 yards, and you got nowhere to go. So
about 4 cars went over the nose of the stationary O'Ward, Well, the last one hit him head on and actually pushed him forward. It actually started the car. The commentators pointed out. So a couple went over the nose, including the biggest was Santino Ferrucci that did a sort of almost on the netting, wasn't he? But luckily head into the circuit and ended up upside down. But the final car to plough into him, which I think was Siegel, I'm not sure which one it was, pushed him straight and pushed him forward, and it bump started the engine. It wasn't going to go anywhere, mind you. The car was wrecked.
Pato Award, you imagine facing that way and you've got everyone coming in the corner at you. Must be horrifying.
But you're glad you got that windscreen. You're glad you got the windscreen. I think that screen is better than the Formula One, and it seems to work really well. I mean, I'm surprised there hasn't been much sort of vision problems, or the worst problem was heating, not enough cool air getting into the cockpit, but it seems to work really well. But if you're upside down completely, you can't get out sideways. You can't crawl out from under an inverted car because the screen's in your way. That would. But,
what a difference now with the past when cars used to just burst into flames. The fuel, especially at the beginning of the race. That is touch wood. I mean, other than Grosjean a few years ago in Bahrain.
Yeah.
You don't really see that unless it's pretty well. Thankfully, look at Alex Albon a few years ago as well at Silverstone, where he's upside down and you imagine. Oh, you can't even begin to think about it. But
Zhao, was it Zhao? You mean
Zhao? Sorry, Zhao. Yeah. But a lot of people used to die through getting trapped in the car and getting burnt. It wasn't the actual impact.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. No, Roger Williams springs to mind. Awful. Bit of drama.
Who else was it? Sorry, Tiff. On who? Somebody else. Austrian guy in Group C used to race. You raced with that. Didn't that happen to him as well in Group C? Austrian chap? No, am I making that up?
Well, quite a few.
He died the week before a big race. Might have been Le Mans or something. You raced with him the week before.
No, that was just a huge shunt. That was at Le Mans. He was killed. Joe Gardner. The car just disintegrated into the trees. There might have been some fire, but I don't think that would have been the cause of death.
And you were racing with him the week before, were you?
Yeah, we came third. We're on the podium at Silverstone 2 weeks before.
Wow.
Joe, he was really quick. Lovely guy, too. A bit of controversy when the Aussie Will Power took out Scott McLaughlin, which was always a bit of coming out the edge of the track with a bit of sarcastic clapping. So there's plenty going on in IndyCar races, lots of overtaking movers. The Brit Toby Sowery was brought back into the Dale Coyne racing team when he finished 13th on his debut, having a one-off, but now he's back for a couple of races, finished 15th out of the 27, survived the carnage.
Good going, yeah.
So entertaining, good to see Colton Herta back on the winnings, lots of drama. And Toronto.
Even the qualifyings. I quite like the qualifying, I have to say, in Indy as well.
The way they run. I know you've got to. If you haven't watched an Indy qualifying on a Friday or Saturday night, it's normally the night before the race, isn't it? It's so good the way they work it. Half the field goes out, and the fastest six make it through. Then you get about 3 laps each. Then it's about a 10-minute session or 15-minute session.
I don't think it's better or worse than F1. I think they both. I actually quite like F1 qualifying as well. Like the drama of is Perez going to get through? Is he not going to get through? But it's nice to see something a little bit different.
But in quali, you see those drivers in IndyCar on the limit, fighting the car. I mean, that's the difference. When they're going for that one fast lap time, they are on it, kissing walls, or in quite a few occasions, going straight on into the walls.
A lot of the time this weekend at Hungary, maybe it's the camera angles, I don't know, but I just thought, are they slowing down? Is there a problem? Because the cars, the fastest cars ever.
Straighten up the lock. Oh, and if they have an opposite lock, they highlight it. Croft is in there quickly. Look at that. Whoa! It's one tab of opposite lock that you haven't seen. Oh, dear. Down south to Larson. Indianapolis, from Canada down to the US of A. It was interesting as
Indianapolis isn't south. Well, I bet it's almost level with Toronto because it's right up there. I bet it's not far off. A little bit south. Right.
It's got to be a little bit south. West, then. And it's interesting to go to Indianapolis because this is a race that's been going now for about 30 years, coming to the Brickyard. Of course, NASCAR didn't race there, in the back old days of Richard Petty. So it's a relatively new race. And for about 17 years, they went round the Indy Oval, Indianapolis racetrack. But the trouble is they're always a bit processional. This is the trouble. It's a very single line track. It's not wide. It's not heavily banked. So the big old NASCARs. So it didn't always produce the best racing. Funny enough, for myself and young Harry, when he was about 15 years old, we went to watch NASCAR because we were a big Montoya fan. And I got some tickets because we couldn't go to the Indy 500 because Monaco was clashed. So a nice holiday with other father and his kids. and went to watch the 2012 Indy NASCAR, and Jimmy Johnson cruised to victory. But the problem is, because it was a bit single line, and they then decided about 3 years ago to use the Indy road course, hoping that might be more entertaining, which it wasn't, because the Indy road course is a rubbish road course. So just even the Indy cars aren't good around it. It just needs readers. It's that Formula One track originally they designed, so that doesn't produce good racing. And all the NASCAR boys wanted to go back to the oval, because they. And this is the sort of story I've got, is how much they all respect Indianapolis as the home of motorsport, almost. Because I saw the Xfinity race, the highlights, which was on the Saturday. And there was this fabulous battle at the end with them, because they haven't quite got the same power. They've got a bit more slipstream, maybe. I don't know why, but they race more racy, especially because they're young kids. And we had this fabulous last 3 laps when you're praying not to get. Sometimes you want a yellow flag, so then they'll have another restart. There'll be more crashes, another yellow flag. But these 3 guys, Riley Herbst, Cole Custer, and Eric Almirola, had this wonderful 3-car battle for the lead. And at one stage, Custer got into the lead, but he and Riley had been side by side through a corner. So Almirola just got the toe and went round the outside of both of them to take the lead going into the last lap. But it was just great racing. But Riley managed to nudge his way past Custer, his teammate, then did the same, tucked his nose inside, coming out of the last corner, heading for the finish line. Anyway, the whole thing about the interview is how this Las Vegas NASCAR boy, he didn't mention Daytona, Daytona, the Daytona 500. He just said, I'm one at Indianapolis, the world's most famous racetrack. And it just felt weird that a NASCAR driver, instead of talking about Daytona, I can't believe I've won. And of course, it was the same with Kyle Larson, then won the main race by strategy again, good bit of strategy and a good bit of driving. Because Larson, he was running the top 5 all the time, top 6, top 10, but they had a wheel problem at the pit stop. So Larson dropped out of the way, dropped about 25th or something. But they used a bit of strategy. They pitted later than everybody else, so they could have enough fuel to run to the finish. And it was then a long, sort of steady section 3, whatever, stage 3, when he gradually overtook and moved up, and all the others were being to save fuel a bit because they wanted to try and get to the last finish line. And so Larson, I think he took second place with 2 laps to go. It was all building up to a humdinger of a race. When there was an accident, I think poor old Jimmy Johnson, I mentioned Jimmy when I saw him win it in 2012. He was taken into the wall twice through no fault of his own on restarts and stuff. We had another crash. Then we had the dreaded green-white checker, back down to a full field pace car. And poor old Brad Keselowski, who was leading ahead of Larson and Blaney, he was just on fumes. And he actually went for the reason, instead of coming into the pits and having a quick splash and dash, which would have made him finish 12th or 13th, he actually went to the final restart and the engine spluttered and he pulled away off. So Keselowski was out. So it was just a battle between Blaney and Larson, which Larson came out on top of. So, but again, Kyle was just, winning the Brickyard 400 was again like, winning the greatest race in his life. Of course, he mentioned he'd been there for the Indy 500, but he loves Indy and Indianapolis. And again, no mention of Daytona. It's funny, but
what's the most famous racetrack in the world? Do you think it's got to be Monaco, isn't it?
Yeah, but is that a racetrack? You see, you think Le Mans, most famous race. Well, they're artificial, aren't they? If you say racetrack, you could think of Brooklands, and then you could think of Indianapolis. Then you could think Daytona, Silverstone.
Silverstone are far more.
Spa was a road course originally, but I know Monaco. What's the most famous race? Must be Monaco, I would say. But then, if you live in America, is it? I don't know. What's the most famous race? What is your vote? Tell us.
Yeah, we've got to put something on social media.
Comments in our comments. They don't comment.
And what does the acronym NASCAR stand for?
What is the what? The North American NASCAR. Sports Car Racing something.
You're so far wrong. So I thought North American as well. It's the National Association for Stock Car Auto Racing.
I would have got that. You just threw that at me too quick. Just didn't give me a chance.
The first racetrack in the USA was the Milwaukee Mile, 1903, and Indy came 6 years later. But the difference is now, what a difference. So the Milwaukee Mile has a capacity of 35,000 people. The Indianapolis has a capacity of 400,000 100,000 people.
And again, there weren't many.
I've got to
go
to Indy.
Race. There weren't many there for NASCAR race. It doesn't seem to attract the crowds. There, it's funny.
I've got to go for the Indy 500 though, because that must be some spectacle.
Epic, absolutely epic. So back home from the USA, we're back into Europe. World Superbikes top rank Razgatlioglu had another sweep.
That's what I said, Razgatlioglu as well. I said
you're
exactly
close.
that on the intro.
You almost got it right. 3 more wins on his BMW. They've got to put him on a MotoGP bike somehow. Then in Bristol, the Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit, wonderful racing, great track. Ryan Vickers and his Yamaha swept all 3 races. So a lot of sweeping going on in the motorbikes. There was an event going on in London. I didn't see much about it. Okay, Formula E. Okay, they had their final 2 rounds of their 23-24 championship, as they call it. It was pretty tense, actually, because it was Pascal Wehrlein led the championship by a few points in his Porsche powered machine. And both the Jaguar boys had a chance of winning the championship. But boy, did it all kick off again. Talk about drivers being upset on their radios. Because Jaguar would try to win the manufacturers' titles, but they had 2 cars and 2 drivers wanted to win the individual title.
Yeah.
And it just all got too close because the strategy has, because you have to do this stupid attack mode, which doesn't attack. It's the most ridiculous thing. It means you lose
they don't
2
want
places.
to do it. Yeah.
No, nobody wants to do their bloody track attack. And so the best way to say you don't lose a place is that if you're running first and second, which I think Jaguar were at one stage without Wehrlein, second place team member backs up the opposition so the leader can get the attack mode and not lose any places. Then the idea is that they swap the lead at the front if they can. Anyway, basically, whatever the Jaguar team tacticians were trying to do, neither driver was happy. Nick Cassidy was on. It's not fair. It was like getting like the children were upset. But at the end of the race, Mitch Evans says that the team was working against him. You know, the poor team was trying to obviously make sure they won the manufacturer's title. 2 drivers wanted to take the individual crown, and they both lost out to Pascal Wehrlein and his Porsche in the end. So yeah, a lot of stuff, a lot of nose banging, the usual, a lot of squealing through the famous the only indoor motor racing in the world to keep people awake through the inside of what's that place called? The NEC
Excel Centre.
The Excel Centre.
Awful.
But
it just doesn't look like a racetrack in a million years. It's just not. It's like
Oliver
you know what
Rowland.
Reminds me of?
Oliver Rowland had a good win for Rowland at the end of this.
It reminds me of when you go indoor karting. All those big old warehouses.
Well, I saw them start. I just saw a flash through the second race. They all do their wheel spins as they go from grid 1 to grid 2. But the smoke inside the hall, they couldn't start the race for about 3 minutes because they had to wait for the smoke to clear. It's the back of the grid, but he couldn't see the lights. That's the end of Gen 3, isn't it? They had this great promise in this Gen 3 that they're going to do these pit stops to recharge, fast charge, 30 seconds of fast charge. I think even they realised that was the most stupid idea that would have.
Yeah.
But whether Gen 4, which is coming at the end of this year, another new car is going to have.
I think Cooper will drop out. Audi gone anyway, aren't they? I don't know. I don't even.
Audi already left.
Cooper will be leaving. I believe. Porsche, Jaguar, Maserati. Yeah.
Anyway, it still doesn't grab my thing, but if it did, Pascal Wehrlein is your champion.
Did I say Wehrlein at the beginning? I think I said exactly that.
You say were. You say were.
I told you, I'm Ron Burgundy. I just read what's there. I'm like Ron Burgundy and Joe Biden. Just read what's there. Next week, what's coming up?
Well, not a lot, funny enough. The Belgium, where I shall be with my Motor Passion guests. There's still a couple of seats left. You want to go to motorpassion.com in the grandstand with me at Spa to watch the Formula 1, the Formula 2. And I'm so looking forward because the whole idea this could be when the papaya McLarens win in front of the Orange Army, because here's Max's home track. When you're in the grandstand, I mean, every time Max goes by, when he's got a 30-second lead last year, and all the Orange Army are cheering every time he went by. So I'm quite looking forward to sitting in a grandstand. I don't think I'll stand up and cheer when Lando goes through in the league, but it should be a good race. Well, I do think I think the Red Bull maybe's got the speed still round at a track the same as Spa.
Well, one of the Red Bulls, you mean? Well, they both got it, but one of the drivers has got it.
But the shock horror, there's no NASCAR. They now have 2 weekends off in the middle of them. It's about 40 weekends. I think they do 20 and then they have a 2-week break and they do 20 more. Incredible season. So the only other thing going on, which is good for the Brits of the weekend, is up at Croft, BTCC at Croft. Not a track I like that much when I drive it. I don't know why. It doesn't often, it's a sort of rear wheel drive.
It's that first turn.
Seems to work.
So for those who don't know Croft, you got this first turn is just like only a couple of 100 yards off the line, and it all sort of goes into a very tight right-hander.
There's a big beach on the left.
Yeah, so it's.
And then they still have that cone. They try to make the cars do a little left-right into turn 2, which I don't know why. They put a cone in the middle of the road, which soon gets
with BTCC, that will last about half a lap, not even.
Then they got, because they've got a chicane, they've got a tyre stacks. So that'll get Tim Harvey upset when it hits the tyre stacks.
What's it? Sunny in, sunny out as well at the end of the track.
That's a funny. So you can't overtake it to sunny in. Well, the people try and end up halfway up the inside and spin them off. It's a funny track for racing on. You just can't get a rhythm. But too many corners.
So that's it. That's
too many corner problem.
Should we get a guest on next week?
All I've got in my list is that. Nothing in Australia, Japan. There were supercars in Sydney last weekend, but I didn't look up the results. Sorry, Aussie fans.
Should we get Max Verstappen on, Lewis Hamilton?
Yeah, let's get them on.
Have a
finish
chat.
the debate off, sort it all out. So yeah, an entertaining weekend of motorsport with plenty of debate to be had. Yerry, our famous Max Verstappen supporter, will doubtless be adding to the comments below. So please. More comments supporting us and less Yerry.
An easy comment. Let us know what you think the most. Are we asking? We've got to be specific here. The most famous race in the world. We kind of know. Most famous racetrack in the world. But that is still Monaco. It's still a racetrack.
Well, I don't know. You see, it depends how you quantify these. I agree with you, really. But is it? I think it just sticks the word race. Most famous race in the world.
Most famous race in the world. Please comment
Monaco
below
Grand Prix, Indy 500, Daytona 500, or Le Mans. Well, the Triple Crown is Monaco, Indianapolis, and Le Mans. The Graham Hill owned Triple Crown, but only he's done it. So really, that's the Triple Crown. So that would be the vote. The most famous track, most famous race, is it Monaco, Le Mans, or the Indy 500? They've all been running. They've all been running for like 7800 years or something.
So same age as you.
Don't you?
Right, on that note. Thanks for joining. See you next week.
Bye.